all started with a new job. The salary was above average, promises of change. I signed the contract without even reading the fine print. It was a factory that was still under construction, and I was waiting for a call with the start date. 2 weeks of silence passed, and then the phone finally rang. The voice on the other end was dry, businesslike.
The factory is delayed, but we have temporary work from the same employer. Do you agree?
Money was running out. There was no choice. I nodded into the phone.
The place was in the middle of nowhere, so far from the city that the GPS lost signal, and the road turned into a muddy path among bare trees. The meeting was set at the company's main office, a gray building next to the unfinished factory, surrounded by rusty fences. The owner himself met me, tall in an expensive coat with a smile that didn't reach his eyes.
"Follow me,"
he said curtly, and got into a black SUV. I obediently started my car. We drove for almost an hour until we turned onto a lonely plot of land. Fog crept over the grass like a living creature. There was his house, old with peeling paint, next to a stable where horses snorted nervously, a small football field with a battered ball, a treehouse and a workshop, a low shed with a tin roof. The morning was damp. The autumn cold pierced to the bone, and there was a smell in the air, heavy, cloying, like rotting flesh. I attributed it to the livestock, but something inside already whispered, "Run." The owner led me to the workshop. The door creaked open, revealing a dark interior with a dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. There he stood, Travis, the manager. Tall, skinny, with long arms that seemed unnaturally flexible. He wore glasses, old-fashioned, rectangular, with lenses so thick that his eyes looked like black spots behind them. His hair stuck out in tufts, as if he had been pulling it out with his hands. If I had met him at night in a dark alley, I would have thought it was the end.
"Hi, my name is..."
I began, but he just glanced at me, his gaze empty and sticky, like damp earth. Then he turned to the owner and muttered,
"We'll get along, haha."
The owner clapped his hands.
"Great. Have fun."
And disappeared, as if dissolving into the fog. I was left alone, with Travis. He reluctantly showed me the machines, threw a couple of words about the job, something about repairing parts, and went to his corner. I got to work, just to avoid crossing paths with him, but his presence was oppressive. He moved silently, like a shadow, and sometimes I caught his gaze, unblinking, as if he didn't blink. A day passed, then a second, a third. Weeks dragged on, and the promised transfer to the factory never came. Commuting here was hell. The road was exhausting, the work backbreaking, and the stench. It grew stronger, permeating everything. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Travis was strange. He only drank Pepsi, warm, from crumpled cans that always littered his desk. He ate only cheap pastries, licking the cream off his fingers with a long tongue. Sometimes he would sneak up behind me. I'd turn around, and he'd be standing a step away, silent, with those black eyes behind his glasses. My heart would pound, but I said nothing. I didn't want to talk to him. He drove the forklift like a maniac, the engine roaring, tires screeching, and each time I expected him to run me over.
"Travis, slow down."
I shouted. He just smirked, showing yellow teeth, and accelerated. And then there were the owner's children. They wandered the property, pale, silent, with empty faces, not a word between them. The youngest, about 9, rode a quad bike, black, shiny, like a toy from a nightmare. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the fog. I didn't see the owner again. When I arrived, he was already gone from home. When I left, he was still at the office. But the worst was the toilet in the workshop. A small cubicle with a rusty sink and a wall behind which something rattled. a loud, rhythmic sound, like someone shaking a pipe, pleading for help. I knocked back, and the noise intensified, turning into a low howl that made my hair stand on end. I didn't dare ask Travis about it. He hardly spoke at all, his face like a mask, his voice like the rustle of leaves. And another detail, he always left before sunset. I thought it was a habit, but then I noticed he was watching the sun. If he stayed late, he would suddenly bolt, drop everything, jump into his car, and speed off without saying goodbye. His rusty car would disappear into the dust, and I was left to finish the work alone.
I prayed for a transfer, but nothing changed. And then came the morning that turned everything upside down. The alarm was set for 6, but I woke up at 5, abruptly, for no reason. Usually, after shifts, I collapsed into bed at 7 in the evening and slept like the dead, though that wasn't normal for me. That day, sleep wouldn't come. I decided to go to work early, might as well earn some overtime. I arrived before dawn.
The sky was black, the fog thicker than usual, and I noticed it. Travis's car. It was parked at the workshop. The light inside was on. Anxiety gripped my throat, but I brushed it off. Just nerves. I opened the door and froze. Travis was there. He was working, a hammer in his hands, movements jerky like a broken marionette. Usually he sat in the corner, lazily sipping Pepsi, but now he was possessed. Metal clanged under his blows. Sweat streamed down his forehead, his glasses fogged up. I coughed.
Good morning?
He froze, slowly turned his head, and smiled. It wasn't a human smile. His eyes, 2 black pits, widened to the limit, teeth bared like a beast ready to tear. His skin tightened, exposing the veins on his neck. He didn't answer, just stared, then went back to work, as if I didn't exist. Fear paralyzed my legs. I wanted to leave, but then he yelled, hoarsely, angrily, "What are you standing there for? Help!" His voice cut like a knife. I took off my jacket, grabbed a hammer, started driving in connectors, just to avoid looking at him. I reached for the nail gun and saw blood. It was everywhere. The nail gun was sticky red. Travis's hands were covered in crimson streaks, his fingers shiny as if dipped in paint. By his desk, a puddle black, thick, with a metallic smell. Next to it, a carcass, a dog, a pig. I couldn't tell, just fur and bones in a mess of flesh. He laughed, low, guttural, not taking his eyes off me. The laugh turned into a growl.
I shouted, raising the nail gun. He lunged at me. I fired. Nails sank into his chest with a dull thud, like into wood. He stumbled, howled, but didn't stop. Blood flowed from the wounds, mixing with the dirt on the floor. I ran.
Outside was the owner. He sat by the stable, bent over a pig's carcass. His hands tore at the meat, teeth sank into the raw flesh, eyes gleaming in the dim light. He didn't notice me. I dashed to my car, key in the ignition. The engine coughed and died. The hood was ajar, wires cut, coated in something black, foul-smelling, like that liquid from the workshop. From behind came the roar of the forklift. Travis was speeding towards me, glasses askew, face twisted in rage. I ran to the owner's house, smashed a window with my elbow, and climbed inside. The smell hit me. Rot, death. On the floor lay chunks of flesh. On the table, animal heads, empty eye sockets staring at the ceiling. So that's where the smell was coming from all along. The children, those silent ghosts, sat in the corner playing with intestines like toys. Their fingers were red, faces emotionless. The house door burst open with a crash. Travis. I bolted through the back door, jumped onto the quad bike, the one the boy had, started it, floored the gas. The field flashed before my eyes. The forklift roared somewhere behind, but I didn't look back. The fog swallowed the sounds. My heart pounded in my throat. I got away. But that smell, that stench of death, still haunts me. And every night I hear it. The clanging of the pipe behind the